Welcome. This is my second video for Hot Licks. The first one had kind of impossible title of effortless classical guitar. And it's impossible to play effortlessly, of course, but as a goal, what I tried to talk about was how to play more efficiently, more relaxed. And I talked about the basics of sitting position, hand position, basic strokes, some strumming techniques, that sort of thing. Well, the focus of this one is kind of the next level. It has also the impossible title of mastery, and I think even the greatest players would not say that they've completely mastered the instrument. But as a goal, what mastery means is to get control. The guitar is a really unpredictable thing. It's hard enough to play one note without a mistake on this thing. And anything we can do to get more control over what we do on the instrument is good. And the things I'd like to focus on are like the sound we create, the kind of dynamics we use, the articulation, long and short of notes, vibrato, and even getting rid of like extraneous noises, clicks and buzzes and squeaks and that sort of thing. Essentially, all the things that make our playing clean and expressive. Once you have control over your fingers, then your technique can ideally become sort of transparent, and all your ideas just flow right out. You don't get hung up. What I'd like to start with is maybe one of the hardest things to describe on classical guitar, but maybe the most important, and it has to do with tone production. How do we get a beautiful sound out of this instrument? First of all, I want to kind of dispel the idea that there's one perfect sound. To quote John Taylor, who wrote a great book about tone production, he said, asking a guitarist what's the perfect sound, it's like asking a painter what's the perfect color. The idea is there's a really wide variety of sounds that are available on nylon string guitar, and you want to know how to manipulate the technique to get what you want and to be able to play really bright, really dark when it's appropriate musically. Okay. All that being said, the thing I'm going to start with is maybe the hardest thing to get on classical guitar, and that is a really warm, full-sounding free stroke. Okay? When I say warm and full, these terms we use to describe sound are kind of random, but technically what I'm saying is we want to have a stroke that has very little high partials to it and is more of the full bottom range. So the idea is, how do we suppress the upper partials in a free stroke? And the reason a lot of people get a thin-sounding free stroke is that they pull the string upwards. Now, what I'd like to try to describe is a little bit of the mechanics of how a plucked string works. And because it's kind of small and hard to see on an actual guitar, I made a little model here. I hope you can oblige me this. Okay, here's a little model of the top of the guitar. And if you can imagine, here's the top of the guitar, and here's one of the strings, and here's another string. Here's the idea. When you displace the string from its point of rest, it's going to want to bounce back to where it started. Okay? So displacing the string is what moves it. And the distance you displace it from its point of rest is the volume. We'll get to that later. But the direction that you displace it is essentially gets the tone. Now, I'll line it up like this so you can see. If you direct the string in a downward motion towards the soundboard, it will have more full, rich sound and less of the high partials. If you move it in an upward way, we can show this here, in an upward direction, away, it will have a thinner sound. Now, that's the reason that most people's rest strokes, which move in a downward way, have a warm, full sound. And a lot of people have a free stroke that pulls the string upwards, and that's why it sounds thin. Now, before I can show you, well, let me show you this on the guitar, just to sort of demonstrate. I'll try, if we can show this here, I'll try to pluck upwards, and then I'll gradually change my pluck to a downward stroke, still doing free stroke, and listen to this, the way the sound changes. So you can instantly hear that. Now, the funny thing is, it's really hard to see it. It's a subtle thing that you have to feel, the pushing the string downward rather than upward. And if your stroke has a lot of pull to it, you'll get a real claw-like thin sound. Now, before we can really show this for sure, what I want to do is go back to an image that I used in the last video that I think helped to show how the finger moved. And what I did was I used my right arm to be kind of like a model for my index finger. So just oblige me here. Like I'm the hand, and here's the first joint, second joint, and here's the nail, and then my arm's moving like this. Now I've got my little guitar thingy here. So you can see how the free stroke will work. And just to review what I did in the last video, I said that if your hand's too far back so that you have to stretch to the string, you get a bad free stroke that pulls upwards. And likewise, if you're too close, you have a bad free stroke that pulls upwards. That if you're in the proper position, you can do a free stroke that moves this way. Okay, so that's a brief review of what I did last time. Well, this works great to show the proper stroke, but it's not really showing this downward displacement thing that I want to show. So what we're missing is the nail. Okay, so just suppress your horror here. This is kind of like a nail, and maybe we'll show this in front just so we can show the whole stroke at first. What we want to do is have a downward motion to the free stroke that still clears the next string. Okay, so here's how we would do a perfect free stroke. Okay, before you pluck, you have to start on this side of the string. This is what I call facing the string. The big problem that a lot of players have is before they do a free stroke, they're actually behind the string they want to pluck. So they go like this. Okay, you got to make sure you're facing the string. Then when you move to the string, you move rather briskly downwards, and you can see now how the string is displaced in a downward way, and then you let it go. Now, the key here is that we're controlling the moment that we're on the string, and we're controlling the direction that we're pushing it down. Okay, now that I showed you that whole thing, let's try it actually on the guitar. Let's see how that works. So maybe we'll look over here and see the index finger facing the string. Okay, I'm going to play the third string with my index finger. So it's facing the string, and then it goes down and pushes it in, and then plays. So it's push, play, and relax. And when I finish playing, it pops right back to where it started. Now, when you push the string down, don't push it straight down, and don't push it at this angle. It's about a 45-degree angle this way, like I showed you on the fake guitar. Okay, so let's just do a couple of these, just rotating. And what you should think about most is what's the direction you're pushing the string while you're holding it. Okay, let's try it now with the middle finger. Same thing. Push, face the string, and move downward at that 45-degree angle. Okay, and then lastly, let's do it with the ring finger. Good. Now, when you're first doing this, you might actually, by mistake, hit the next lower string. And I think, theoretically that's a bad thing to do, but I think the reason that many people have trouble with free stroke, getting a full sound, is they so desperately want to avoid hitting the next lower string that they overdo it and go way out. And for me, the perfect free stroke is one that just barely misses the next string. That's giving the lowest possible trajectory to the finger. Okay, so now let's talk about the thumb just briefly, and the same idea. So the thumb is opposing the fingers, so it's moving the opposite way. So let's take a look at the thumb here. So the thumb starts on this side of the string, whereas the fingers start on this side. The thumb will start on this side, push down, and then relax. Right now I'm doing rest stroke. You can do rest stroke or free stroke. But you see that here you can really clearly see the displacement of the string. Okay, and now let's try a block chord where we'll hit the thumb and all fingers. So we'll push all of them down and relax. And here you can really feel the energy you're putting into the string. Okay, now the whole concept here is that we want to kind of change our mindset about what it is to pluck the string. I think a lot of players kind of play where the energy is at the moment of the pluck. It's like, okay, the way I want to do it is put the energy into the string before, where I want to go, ah, ah. So that moment of energy where you're pushing the string in first, that's when you're making all your decisions about what kind of sound you're going to create. And the moment of the pluck is actually just a relaxation. If you do it right, the relaxing the relaxation of one chord sort of pulls you into the facing position of the next one. Okay, so let's just show this on the tight angle again so we can see how that works. Okay, when you do these chords, also when you relax, I want to make sure that you don't over-exaggerate by stretching out. Okay, that's bad, because then you've totally lost your sense of where the strings are. You want to keep your curvature and go right in front of the strings, so they're right there. You know where they are all the time. Okay, now we will get to actually playing the guitar in a minute, but there's one other aspect to tone production that you've got to understand. We just talked about displacement, which is the direction you push the string down. The other really important thing is what I call the angle of the stroke. And I'll use my little model again here. Okay, if you're imagining the string, looking at the strings this way, the idea is, what's the angle that the finger is moving through? Is it moving in a diagonal to the string, or is it moving directly perpendicular? And now that we can see this funny nail from the side, when it moves when your finger moves in a slight diagonal, you can see that it touches the string, it touches the nail at this edge, and as it moves through, the string will slide across the nail and then let it go. When you move perpendicularly, it sort of catches it all at once and lets it go all at once, kind of like a pick. Now, the way the string works is if there is this, what they call a gradual release, like this. It's gradual, but it happens very fast. It's comparatively gradual. This will also suppress the higher partials of the note. In other words, make it warmer. And if the nail works like a pick with a sudden release, it will create a sharper, pingier sound. Okay, so now putting that on the guitar, I want to show you. This is pretty drastic effect. If I have my hand angled so that my finger's moving like towards my elbow, then I'm starting from this side and moving across. It's a nice warm sound. Now what I'll do is I'll change my wrist angle to make my finger more perpendicular so that my finger's moving like to my shoulder. And listen to the change in the sound. Okay, you can instantly hear all the body go out of the sound when it's like this. And if you go way over, you can get an extremely warm, fluffy sound. Now, almost anybody right now can get a better sound out of the guitar just by doing this, just by changing, if you're playing real perpendicular, changing a little bit diagonal. Now, you can't overdo it, and the problem with this is when you play in the bass strings, the windings can make like a scratchy sound, and you don't want to get that. So what I do sometimes is I actually change the angle of my hand as I'm going down. So I have a little more perpendicular on the bass strings and a little more diagonal on the trebles. It warms up the trebles, brightens up the basses, and it sounds real balanced. This is something you'll have to work with, but understanding this principle of the angle of the stroke is really important. So now we have at least two different ways to change our sound from very bright to very dark without even moving, in the traditional Ponticello Tasto way. So this gives you an incredibly wide range of colors that are available. Okay, so we'll do some work a little bit later on some special sounds that we can get using these ideas now that we know them. But I have to finish this discussion, we will get to playing in a minute, with one of the most important things, which is you can have the perfect stroke, the perfect position, everything's great, but if your nail is bad, it's not going to work. Okay, and let me show you exactly why this is. Okay, one more time to our little demo here. And here is a bad nail shape, okay? We can show this from the side. Here's a nail that has kind of a hook to it, okay? And as it moves through the string, you can see how it sort of catches in this spot and then gets hooked up. Now, even if I'm doing the proper stroke, it will carry the string upwards. See how the string is moving upwards. And even if I'm moving diagonally, it still releases the string quickly. So, unless I have a really strange stroke with this nail, it's going to sound bad. And if I go back to the normal nail, you can see how it moves smoothly through, it directs the string downward and releases it slowly. Okay. Also, one thing about this bad nail is as the string jumps from the flesh to the nail, right here, you're going to get a wear mark right here. And a lot of players have that problem. Okay, so this is the nail shape we want. How do we file the nails? Okay. Here's the perfect nail shape. And let's just imagine imagine a line coming out of the tip of your finger. Okay, and if we see this from the side, okay, here's, I know this looks really strange, but it helps to see it. Here's our file, okay? All right, now, here's the trick. We want to hold the file at a 45-degree angle to the nail, to this line coming out. Okay, looking at the finger from the side, we hold the file at a 45-degree angle. Okay, then looking at the nail from the top, we'll hold the file at a little less than 90 degrees. Like this is 90, it's a little less. This angle will definitely change depending on your hand position and number of variables. But this side angle stays pretty much the same. Okay, once you get the plane of the file set, essentially you will file the nail completely in line with this file. Now, if I get the bad nail out, you can see, I'm going to juggle all this. You can see exactly where this nail, this bad nail, isn't working. You can see where it's too short right here. There's that little spot, that gap there. Okay, it's going to be where the string's going to catch. Okay, so how do you file? You define the plane of the file, and you get it so it lines up. And then buffing is really important. You want to make sure that you have a really slick, smooth surface for the string to ride along. You want to make sure that you carefully file the underneath of the leading edge of the nail and carefully file the top of the release side, because the string's going to go like that. Okay? If there's any little catch or gouge in the nail, or any little glob of glue or polish just at the release point, it'll screw up the sound of a perfectly shaped nail. Okay, let me show you this on my normal nail so it doesn't look so ridiculous. Okay, we can show this real tight. You can see this is how I would look at my nails. I would line up my eyesight with the plane of the file. And can you see how each nail is essentially defining a straight line? Like that. And even my thumbnail, when it's seen from this side, defines a straight line. That will present to the string a nice smooth ramp for the string to ride along and easily let go of. Okay, so I hope this makes some sense to you. Let's get to the next issue, which is really important. We talked how the displacement of the string, the direction of the displacement, affects the tone. Okay, the distance that you move the string directly affects the dynamics, the volume. The distance you move the string will determine how much energy it has. So knowing this, we can change our mindset about dynamics. Louder does not mean hitting harder. The only difference between a loud note and a soft note is how far you move it. So there's really no need to have a completely different stroke with a loud note or a soft note. So what I do in my head is instead of necessarily thinking dynamics, I think, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is the smallest amount I can move the string. 10 is the biggest amount I can move it without it buzzing. And then in between there I have these little gradations. So just with a rest stroke on the index finger, let's see this. I'll do a little crescendo and decrescendo, but what I'm trying to see is not so much crescendo, decrescendo, but distance of displacement. Here I'm moving it a little more, a little more, and the most. Okay, let me do it on the D string because I think you can see it a little better. And then there's a point at which if I move it any more, it will start to buzz. When you do this with rest stroke especially, you can see that if you're directing the string straight down, it will buzz much more than if you direct it at that 45-degree angle. Okay, so this is the idea that however loud you want to play, just move the string more before you hit it. Okay, let's try it with block chords. And I'll do another. So you can clearly see how much the strings are moving. But when I go loud and soft, the hand stays exactly the same. The way it returns, here's a loud note, here's a quiet note. It's pretty much the same. There's no big difference. So let me just play a brief example of this. It's from a piece by Leo Brouwer that really uses dynamics, and control over these dynamics can really make the piece come alive. cetera, et cetera. So you can see how if you plan your dynamics out so that you can control it by how far you're pushing, you can get an extremely wide range and control of your dynamics. One other thing that's a really great sort of benefit to this way of thinking of dynamics is what I call voicing. Voicing is like bringing out one individual voice in, let's say, a block chord. And that's really hard to do. You hit a C major chord, and for some reason you need to bring out the third string in that chord. Well, how do you do it? If you're just doing your dynamics by hitting harder, it's really hard to just hit that one string more. But it's very easy to move it more when you grab the whole chord. So when I played the C major chord, when I grab the whole chord, if you can see that I push the index finger more and then just play it, the third string pops out. And likewise, let's say I want to bring out the middle finger. I just grab it more, or the ring finger, or the thumb. So you can actually do what I call a block chord arpeggio, where you're going to hear this while I play block chords. And that's all just by, when I grab the whole chord, I just push that particular finger a little more. I'm putting more energy into it, and you get exactly what you want. So now that we have some tools for sculpting our dynamics, let's just apply this to one very brief part of a piece. This is just an example. I don't know if you know this particular piece. It's the first study by Fernando Sor. Beautiful little three-voice chorale kind of piece. And I'll just play the first 4 measures of it, and then we'll talk about it. It just goes. Okay, now when you first play this, you might want to think about what dynamics you want to do. You want to have the first chord quiet, a gradual crescendo, louder, louder, and then in this chord is the loudest, but you want the middle voice, the suspension, to be loudest in that chord, and then real quiet on the resolution. Same shape here. Crescendo, and the D, the loudest, and then a resolution. So how do you do this to make it for sure? Well, I would do it by stopping in between each chord and thinking about my displacement. A little bit, a little more, and then on this chord, most, but push the index. And then very light on that one. Then same shape, more, most. And then you continue with the piece. Okay, that just gives you an inkling of the kind of control you can have over your dynamics. And you can really sculpt them just the way you want, bring each individual voice out. So you don't have to do it with that piece, but that was just a good example. Now, one thing that piece kind of brought up, though, that piece was made up of legato chords, okay, a series of chords with no breaks in between. And this whole time I've been telling you, well, stop on the string and control that moment. Now, you might have been thinking, well, wait a minute, how can I play legato if he's asking me to stop on the string? And this brings up a sort of a big debate in classical guitar, and I'll stand on my soapbox and give you my opinion. Some players feel that you should never practice with preparation, or what's called planting, on the string, because it makes it impossible to play legato. In other words, if you always have a stop on the string, you can never play without a break. Well, I completely disagree. I think the reason planting has a bad rap is that it's usually done incorrectly. But the point is, no matter whether you think you're playing perfectly legato or not, at some point you have to stop on the string. Okay? It's impossible to play the string without stopping on it. And I prefer to control that moment. Okay? And here's the most important part of it. The key is what I called facing the string. If you are in front of the string before you play it, then you can move to it. Let's show it from the side. I can show you with this piece. Okay, if I'm facing this first chord, I can move to it and stop, and then play it. Or I can choose to very quickly go through it. The thing is, it's exactly the same motion. I'm moving at the same amount. The only thing I'm changing is how long I'm staying on the string before I let it go. Okay, so that's, well, there, I'll get off my soapbox now. what this brings up is a whole other issue, which I call articulation. And articulation simply means controlling the length of notes. Are they short? Are they long? What are they? And I think it's one of the most overlooked aspects to guitar playing. And it's